for all.
All right, we'd like to welcome everybody here. Got a pretty good turnout here. I know we've got a few more people that will be coming. One of the things we are, so thank you. So anyway, so we'd like to begin. I would like to have our fire department with their report.
What I'd like to do is I'm just going to share a quick message from our Fire Chief, Brian Dale. I don't have a lot for you, and then I'll just open it up for questions, concerns, or any comments.
The skewer in it is the numbers. Oh, you want me to go on the?
Yeah, this is to the world. This is coming out of the world. We got to hold you accountable.
Okay. The only difference from the same time frame last year was auto theft. It came out as 300%, but there was a difference of 3. So the numbers were so low that it sounds a whole lot worse than it is. Overall, though, compared to last previous 28 days, our auto theft is down 39%, a difference of 18 vehicles. So that's huge. So we're definitely going in the right direction. Our ag assaults and assaults that had bothered me before are down 33%. So we're looking really good in our area, which is nice. It's nice to get trend.
Did these things change because of the weather, or because of, is it a deterrent?
You know, I looked into the ag assaults the last time because it wasn't one of the things that we were focused on so much, but it was a trend that kind of bothered me. When I looked into it, most of them were domestic violence related, which, you know, if we had that answer, it would be nice. The other few scattered ones, most of them we had people in hand for the crime, so I felt decent about that. Not that I like to see it happen, but at least we can catch the perpetrator. Let's see, our larceny and theft, which is a huge one, because that's always an issue, is down 68%, which is nice. So all the trends for us right now are going the direction I want. They're at least leveling off or going down, which is good for us. So.
Are you comparing the previous 28 days and the 28 before that, or last year's 28?
We're the 28 days before. Usually the week-to-week one is compared against the same time frame last year. But when we're talking about the previous 28 days, it's actually how the more recent trends. Somewhat confusing. Go ahead.
Curiosity, how many cars do you guys usually find that are reported stolen?
How many do we find?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't have that information. So, you know, here's usually what happens. What I've seen in our trends recently, we'll have a car stolen here in Rose Park. They'll recover it in Midvale. They'll get a car stolen in Midvale, recover it here. So the trend has been they're not parting them out. I actually heard one vehicle in the last 6 months that it sounds like they stripped. They're using them for transportation. I guess it's the criminal version of UTA. They're just getting from point A to point B. Because so when they're recovering them, they're actually in fairly decent shape, which is good, but it's still bothersome. But I think we've been pushing the efforts on target hardening as far as people not leaving them running unattended, not leaving the keys in them, so on and so forth. Hopefully that, it seems like the message has gotten out there because it's dropped off drastically. So that's a good thing. That's about where we're sitting there. Our burglary squad did a operation yesterday. They're out there for 4 hours. They did 13 pedestrian stops on persons who were doing I don't specifically know, but they didn't look like they're doing good things. They did note that they found a burglary ring or a theft ring of bicycles, which has been a rampant problem for us, out of Ivy Circle that they're doing follow up on. That's good. And then they got some leads on some other guys we've been looking at. So they're out there doing some good work. Other than that, it's been business.
What do they do with the bikes? You said they got a burglary ring. Are they stripping the bikes?
They're stripping them. They're using them for transportation. Here's the last, I'd say 2 years, is the worst I've ever seen of bikes being stolen in my career. The problem with bikes being stolen, how many of you have your serial numbers on your bikes? So they get stolen. I can see a dude hauling around 6 bikes, but if I don't have serial numbers, I have no way to prove they're stolen unless we have photos, and they'll sometimes send in photos to detectives, but that's cumbersome to get out in the field and tracked down, so it's hard to prove that it's actually stolen, even though in my heart of hearts I know that's a stolen vehicle, or a stolen bicycle. So we're working on ways to combat that because it's been rampant.
You can register them, right?
Yes, you can. And you should, have them licensed through the fire department, through their stations, they can do it. Have your serial number, maybe put your own identifying number with a Dremel tool or something in it, and that goes for all your electronics and stuff that is easily pawned or walks away from your homes as well. So, any other questions or concerns? Okay, I will hang out. Okay. I will hang out in the back for about 15 or 20 minutes if there's something you want to discuss with me that you don't feel comfortable bringing up.
And aggravated assault, would that include rape?
No, that's a sexual assault. That's a different classification.
Do you have any statistics on that?
The last week we've had 0. The last 28 days before that we had 3, which was unchanged from the same time frame last year. And the last 28 days we had 1 more than before, so for a total of 2, which is 50% change, but it's pretty low, thank goodness. Also, all this information off CompStat is available on our website. On the front page, it'll say crime statistics. You can slcpd.com. You can pull all that information up. The same stuff that we use to plan out some of our operations. Same information you guys can get. I'll give you my phone number: 801-799-3626, and my email: district1-1 And again, I am Detective Dustin Marshall. You're shaking your head at me? Am I messing up again?
Thank you. I'd like to break from the agenda just for a moment. We've got Mayor, please, I never can get the name right, Skupski's relations manager. And that, if you could come up and just take a few minutes and just tell us what's going on in the mayor's office.
Courtney, how are you? It's nice to see familiar faces. So I don't have a lot to update on, but I really wanted to come out and introduce myself to the Rose Park Community Council, and just let you know how much Rose Park means to me. None of you know this, obviously, I'm telling you, but my grandma actually lived in the Escalante Apartments. She lived out the rest of her life there. So I remember coming down and we would walk the golf course, and she would let me steal the golf balls. Don't tell Parks that now, but since it's being recorded, it's too late. And of course, I do spend a lot of time at this golf course and on the golf course as well. So I love Rose Park. It means a lot to me. I've been coming down here for a really long time. Community councils, they mean a lot to me as well. I was the vice chair before I got this position of the East Central Community Council. You may remember my run for Salt Lake City Council District 4. And then I was appointed by Mayor Skupski in early January to be one of the community liaisons. And I'm thrilled to be here on the west side. It really means a lot to me, like I said, because of my grandma, and of course my dad also grew up here in the Rose Park, Glendale, Poplar Grove area. So I got a lot of roots connections down here. So I got to go back. That means a lot to me. So as far as updates go for the mayor's office, of course there's a lot of transition going on. And that's just due to change, right? I think a new administration always brings in new change. Some of it's a little more controversial than others, but it's all about leadership and making sure that there's the best representation for everybody in the city. Relative to my work as community liaison, it's about engagement, it's about empowerment, making sure that your voices are heard in the decision-making process. And not that wasn't going on previously, but we really want to see this evolve into more community engagement, organizing, and empowerment of your voice in the city decision-making process and participation in anything relative to the city, whether it's boards and commissions, on community councils. And I really need your input on what that process looks like, what that evolution looks like, what worked well, how you think this could evolve. The relationship that I have with you, with Councilman Rogers, that's important to me. I want to make sure that that's very, very clear to you all how committed I am to that, and how committed the mayor is to communication, and making sure that's at the forefront of everything that we do. With that said, I'd love to take any questions that you might have relative to the mayor's office.
Yeah, has the mayor given some second thoughts to replacing the talented and gifted people that we've had in leadership positions in this city with friends and family?
You know, I'm not sure where that's at right now. Like I said, you know, change brings on a lot of
Well, it's
transition.
been in the news.
It has been in the news.
You can't miss it.
No, I definitely didn't miss it, and I definitely noted, you know, whether that's
It's a
controversial or not.
serious accusation. It's terrible.
Yes.
It's almost criminal. Might be, I don't know. But we're not happy.
Okay, and that's definitely something that I'll take back to the mayor's office, and I would
Thank
love
you.
to get your contact information so I can follow up with you on that.
You know, all we hear about is how she has let go a bunch of people, but we've never heard if they willingly went, if they chose not to work with her. You know, you only hear one side of the story in the paper, and everybody's attacking her for maybe letting some of these people go, but maybe they also chose not to work with her.
Yeah, certainly, and a lot of that is information.
But we don't hear that, because it's really none of our business, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and a lot of that's information I don't know relative
Yeah.
to the HR perspective. That's obviously joined with that. You know, so it's.
It's
you know,
kind of,
something
it
that
could
I
be a
don't
two-way
think-
street, you know,
Certainly. I'll agree with you on that.
That director's gonna walk away from the job.
Is
he may have, I don't know, maybe he was there for a long, long time, I don't know, they never interviewed him, saying he didn't want to go. I'm just saying it's a possibility.
Is there a timeline for the transition to kind of cease and things to get rolling again? When's that all going
Certainly,
to
it's
end?
an ongoing process right now. You know, there's a lot of, you know, new dynamics that are coming, like I said, relative to evolution, also in my position, but also in the mayor's office as well. And what that looks like is an ongoing, you know, thing that we're working on. So even just in my position, Jennifer Seelig and I are working on the job description. We're working on what that evolution looks like and how we're going to be recruiting another community liaison as well as a refugee community liaison as well. So it's ongoing.
I didn't get your name.
So
Tell
it's
me again.
Nate Salazar, and I can write my information on the board. I see a dry erase marker anywhere. I can definitely provide you with that information. And my email address, if you want to write it down, is nate.salazar, and that's SALAZAR @slcgov.com. SALAZAR. And then my phone number in Metro City is 801-535-9796. All right, and then again, I just want to emphasize the importance of your involvement in what we're doing in the city. And I'll definitely be here for the remainder of the meeting to answer any questions that you might have after the meeting's over. Thanks.
Okay, don't see our representatives from our business spotlight here, but I do have some couple people on good authority. The business coming up. Most of you know that over by Savers, they're by the Dollar Tree, or the Dollar Tree, different place, but anyway. They're building a new restaurant there called Hacienda Grill. I don't know how many of you are familiar with La Hacienda that's down on 13th South. 13th South and everything. But anyway, it's they serve authentic Mexican food, and that which is hence the name. But one of the things they are doing different up here, just so you know, is that this is called Hacienda Grill, which those of you that like Cafe Rio, Chipotle, some of those types of businesses and stuff where where they fix it right there in front of you, that's what they're going to be concentrating on. And that, so Trina, you've got a little first-hand knowledge on that. Would you
I have no first-hand knowledge of Hacienda Grill, but La Hacienda is one of my favorite Mexican restaurants, and I'm kind of a little bit heartbroken that it's not going to be exactly like the one on Redwood Road. But they do great food, and so I'm expecting great things from them.
Do we know when it opens?
But one of the things that they are doing is there's a couple of setbacks that they have, so they're looking to hopefully open the end of February, first part of March, as soon as you get through a couple of hurdles and things that they're doing. But they are looking forward to being here. Spoke with the owner a couple of weeks ago, and they're very excited to come in. And one of the things that she did mention when I spoke with her is there's some hiring opportunities that are there, so just be aware of those. So as soon as that opens, you get the hires on there. If you know people that would like to, work there, they'll be looking for those opportunities. So anyway, so we'll look forward to that, and hopefully we can maybe get them here again when they're officially. Yes.
Do you know the projected opening date?
No, she wasn't quite sure when I spoke with her. There's a couple of hurdles they're trying to work through right now. So, but anyway, she promised me to do it. So, okay. All right. So now to kind of get down to where we're going, we're excited to have. And we're going to ask them to come up here if they would take a place up here. City Councilman James Rogers is here. If you want to come on up to the table. We'd like to excuse County Councilman Arlen Bradshaw. He's ill. And that. Also, Legislative Representative Sandra Holmes. She just walked in the door, so I'm glad she's here. Senator Chuck Weiler. And I don't see Luz. Hopefully she'll.
I spoke to Luz earlier. She had an executive appropriation meeting that she got called into this evening.
Okay. All right. And we would like to, I don't know if Nathaniel can do it, on behalf of Congressman Chris Stewart. Were you able to come in and sit up and take a few questions or not?
It would actually probably be better if it was Rhonda, since she's from the official campaign.
Okay. So we'll have them kind of give some updates. Yeah, if you want to come up here and just take kind of give us some updates on your conversation.
And I'm hoping. So I'm Rhonda Perks, for those of you that haven't met me before. I'm hoping to come to this meeting a bit more frequently in the next little while. I've been working for Congressman Stewart for about a year. So I'm just going to tell you just a couple of things that have been happening in the congressional office. Chris is in D.C. this week, but last week he was here for a good portion of the week and was able to go to the Capitol and speak to the House and the Senate there. The week before last, we had really a great opportunity to have an official congressional hearing in St. George, which was really a big deal for the state of Utah. And it didn't affect us up north in this area quite as much, but it was a congressional hearing that dealt with a lot of land issues that our farmers and ranchers are dealing with in the southern part of the state. And we felt that was needed to happen here in this state of Utah, so that those people had an opportunity to come visit with members of the BLM from Washington, D.C. and their Congress, their representatives. So that was a really productive thing that happened, and hasn't really happened in the state of Utah for about 10 years. And 3 of the 4 congressmen from the state of Utah were there. So that was a great opportunity. We were happy to have that happen. In the terms of just very, very timely things that are happening, Congressman Stewart did introduce a piece of legislation this week that had to do with the Zika virus, and there's some concerns there that if that gets to be widespread, that there's going to be some real issues that happen, especially with the Olympics coming up. So that piece of legislation was proposed this week by Congressman Stewart to give the federal agencies some more resources and flexibility to do some research on that virus and some of the treatments and vaccines that maybe we could come up with. So I will leave it at that, and thanks for letting us come. Thank you.
Okay, we'd just like to take a moment and ask James if he'd just give us a city update quick before we proceed into the next portion or something.
The city update, I hate to say, would probably just be included with everything that's going on in the city. So I'll just start with, in January, we had our council retreat to discuss priorities for this coming year. There were 3 priorities selected. One of them was affordable housing, which coincides with homelessness, because homelessness really is for people that don't have a house to live in. So we're streamlining the process for affordable housing, exploring options to increase affordable housing and options for all city residents, not just only in District 1, District 2, but also over on the east side with 763. And we're also in coordination with the county to be part of the improvements to oversee the facilities for the homeless and evaluate city zoning for facility locations in anticipation for the state funding. So with the Homelessness Coalition that was put together last year with former Mayor Becker, Ben McAdams, to seek funding options, they're up there currently asking for $27 million. $20 million for new facility and $7 million for ongoing funding for the service providers for that facility. So that all ties in with affordable housing. And last night we approved to move forward with our housing policy, which took us all last year, and within 10 minutes of the 3rd meeting we got it approved to put on the agenda for approval. So that was very exciting. Our second council priority is economic development. And economic development, for me, you hear people talk about economic development to them is recruiting. So we're going to be strategically placing people in charge with working with economic EDC Utah as well as GoEd in streamlining the process that we actually have a seat at the table in recruiting new businesses to come to Salt Lake. Another issue with economic development, people talk about, well, let's focus on neighborhood nodes. Of course, that's fantastic. You look at 9th and 9th, or you look at 15th and 15th, or the Central 9th. If we had a neighborhood node in Rose Park, I think that would be so fantastic. An area where you could walk to a coffee shop, you could go to a local business, a local grocer, and not have to worry about getting in your car and going to that facility. So neighborhood nodes is also going to be a focus on it. But for me, last year, the priority that I pushed through the council was building services, is streamlining the process where somebody can go and get a business license in a day, that they can go and apply for a building permit and not have to wait 12 weeks to get the building permits approved. And so we've contracted out for a building services audit, where a consultant will come in, he'll talk to developers, he'll talk to local people that have dealt with building services, and try to figure out a way that we can streamline that process as well. Because we know that in order for people to feel like they can actually get something done, it's time, and that's all we've got is time, and we don't want to waste that time. And then the third is cutting the red tape. We hear this all the time. It just takes too long. It takes too long to do this, it takes too long to do that. It's too hard to get approved. So I'm extremely excited for the building services audit. The third one is sustainability for funding of streets, curb, and gutter, plus sidewalks. We know that Salt Lake City's infrastructure is failing. How do we pay for that? How are we going to fix these roads that have been scheduled for replacement, for slurry seal, for chip seal, that have been scheduled for 10 years that haven't been done? So the city has done away the district by district streets. Usually they would go by district, figure out which roads one year needed to be done, then they move on to the following the next year. And now they're prioritizing, because it was a policy issue, that why wait every 7 years to come back to District 1 to have the streets? It doesn't make sense. And on a legislative issue, for me, we know firsthand that Salt Lake City, and I hate to say this, we have 2 elected officials here, takes the brunt of what happens up on the hill, right? Yep. You can look at it with Medicaid expansion, or whether or not we're fighting, for example, the prison, the Northwest Quadrant economic development key factor. We need to make sure that the Northwest Quadrant, which we're doing a master plan currently, and you'll be contacted, Blake, to have them come talk about that. We need to make sure the infrastructure is there, not only just for the prison, but for future growth in the Northwest Quadrant. And Salt Lake City shouldn't take the brunt for paying for that. Thank goodness Sandra Hollins was there. She worked directly with the city in order to make sure that the state agreed to pay for all infrastructure costs going to the prison. That means roads, sewer, water, electrical, gas, everything will be covered by the state of Utah. And we need to continue to make sure that Salt Lake is on board with that. The second one for the city with the legislative, and it's all impacted by the state of Utah, is the State Fair Park. We need to make sure that that historic icon in our district continues to be there, that it still functions as a state fair park, that we still have the rodeos that would be able to go there. So we're working hand in hand with elected officials up there to make sure that that continues. And of course, I explained a little bit about the homeless facilities and services. No, thank you. Well, I just got a call. So, no, not this time, right, Porky? And just a couple things that are ongoing projects that we'll continue to do is urban forestry. How are we going to continue to make sure that the urban forestry in Salt Lake City is continuing to grow? Capital improvement projects. Our money for capital improvement projects gets cut every single year, and we've got to figure out how we can sustain that how we can sustain that continuation of the funding process. Something interesting for me that I was able to get on as an active project this year is reducing the use of plastic bags in the city, as well as water and the use of our staff time. I talked about time with building services, but also with our staff time. We waste a lot of time not being able to track what's going on day to day with council staff. And by having some sort of tracker, we're going to free up a lot more time, that these projects will get more time to move forward, so we get it on agendas, so we get staff work from the mayor's office. But reducing plastic bags, we know that the landfill has a life expectancy that will be capped off at some time. And we need to make sure that we are sustainable in Salt Lake City, not only with water, but with the plastic bags that we see that are going all over the place. So that's just a brief overview. Before I pass it on, are there any questions in regards to anything that I've touched on that I can dive into deeper that you might be interested in learning more about?
We actually just moved here from Colorado, and one thing that was happening in our area to reduce water usage in Colorado due to the drought was the water department was going through and they would host free classes on xeriscaping, and then they would teach you how to xeriscape your front yard, and then you would get a water rebate. You would get $1 for every square foot that you had turned into xeriscaping that was like a rebate on your water bill, but it encouraged the homeowners to go through and look at doing that. So it's just an idea of something to put out there.
That's a great idea. And as soon as we get a public utilities director, I'll bring that up with them. That would make light of the situation. For me. Yes?
Rose Park is filled with beautiful trees and a bunch of front yards, and that creates a lot of piping issues. So whereas there are a lot of different districts in Utah where the city or the county or whatever owns the street. So if you have a piping issue, you have to tear up the street that we pay for by the city. In Rose Park, that's not the case. So, for example, we have a piping issue. We fix it all along our yard, but it's thousands and thousands of dollars to rip up the street, which I don't feel we should own. So what can we do to get that changed in our district?
Public utilities, right? So that is a great question that I will not pass on, but I'll dive into, and if I can get your information, I'll follow up with you on that.
We've had a presentation before at these meetings where there's an insurance that's like $2 a month.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Oh, you're joking.
And because our basement flooded with sewage, and we had to fix all these issues, and the city recommended that we get this insurance, and we called them, and our plumber was able to prove that there's a breakage, but they said, unless you have an emergency and your house floods again, we're not going to help you fix it. So why should I be paying for that insurance if they're not actually going to fix the break? And I think they falsely advertise that as well.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to cancel mine.
Yeah,
I think the city, because the city is paying for part of it.
They're endorsing it, yeah.
You're endorsing it.
Well, that's a great question. It is meant for emergency, but they've also, whether good or bad, they've broadened that horizon. And I've heard from people, there must have been a certain circumstance, because I've heard from other people that have had issues that actually the insurance company did come in and take care of the entire line.
No, we actually called them. They had a service person come out.
Did you get some sort of service ticket number or anything like that that I can research and find out exactly what's
We're
going
gonna have
on.
to look back, I'm sure.
Well, I will do that, and we'll find out
Thank you.
what's the issue.
Out of curiosity, Gateway was just sold.
Yeah.
Now, the city's not gonna give them a whole ton of money to redo that, are they?
Well, nothing has been brought to us that I know of. I mean,
I know the RDA loves to give away money to redo certain areas, like that one that's fell all apart with the building.
which one?
The one that was, I don't know, it was downtown, the guy walked away from it, that big development.
Oh, yeah, on State
That
Street.
big mess.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was just wondering what Gateway you have.
Well, you know, it's the Vestar Group that purchased it, and they're out of Arizona. And they're going to come in and do a destination entertainment restaurant type deal. So it's all going to be restaurants, you know, small brew pubs, that kind of thing, to draw people to the Gateway area, which
Sounds kinda cool.
I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be a destination area. It's across from Vivint Smart Home Arena. Did I get that right?
Yes.
So they're whatever. So I'm really excited about that because, you know, it has fallen into you know, into a, I don't want to say slum, but it's not what it once was. So we're excited down in the city that somebody actually has interest in doing, and they've done it before. They have a proven track record of being able to buy these distressed properties and turn them into winning projects. So time will tell. I'm very excited for it. Yes.
Kind of advantage to your local economy for Rose Park. I know there's going to be a bill coming. It's probably in fact more of our office, but I'd like to know what your influences and how to voice constituents on this for a short-term rental bill coming for those in Rose Park
VRBO.
to use Airbnb and whatnot, shut down due to building zones. What changes can be made or working on that?
So we actually looked into this as a city 2 years ago, and we talked about moving it forward, but we had threat from up the state capitol to kill that bill. So we didn't want that opportunity. They said give us a chance to work with them. So that's where we've kind of led it up to the legislature to figure that out before we actually go in and then have them smack our hands down on something that we've approved.
And we know there's something in committee at the moment, so if you could be on the lookout for that.
For sure. I will absolutely put that on there. Great. Just a side note, things that I'm currently working on as well. I'm highly involved with the Northwest Quadrant Master Plan, but also I'm pushing with Mayor Biskupski a 2200 West Master Plan, which for me is really big. 2200 West is where you have Boeing, you've got L3 Communications, you've got so many buildings that are going up in this commercial industrial business park area. And the problem is in the past 6 months, I've probably had fielded 15 or 20 phone calls from developers, speculators that are trying to build there, and it makes me nervous because we don't have a master plan for that area. Especially moving forward, I do not. Well, you know, and I don't want to see it turn out like Redwood Road and 21st South and 17th South, where everything is just hodgepodge together. For me, this is a huge economic driver. It's going to bring jobs to the neighborhood where people actually can probably ride their bikes to work instead of getting in their cars. So this master plan, all the way up, even up to the end of the city boundaries, is key for us, so that we can protect our current assets that we have here. So that's in the works as well. So, all right, I've monopolized way too much time for our great officials here.
Okay, I just want to take a second. We'll ask Senator, or I want to say Senator Collins, Representative.
Not yet.
To take a few minutes and kind of give us an update on what's going on with the legislature from the legislature side, and then we'll ask Senator Weiler to take a few minutes, and then what we'll do is we'll give them each about 5 minutes or so to kind of give a brief update on that. And what we'll do is we're going to take and we'll open up for some questions, and we'll direct any question to any of the representatives here. I do have some 3x5 cards. If you want, I can pass those out. So you can write down your question if you're too shy to voice it out, or we'll just kind of monitor through and take some questions off the floor. And we may have some questions off of our streaming as well. So we'll ask Brandon to kind of watch those through and be able to.
I'll just raise my hand I'll raise my hand if I see something.
If you would, please. So anyway, Representative Hollins and then Senator Weiler.
Thank you. I want to apologize up front. I may be coughing a lot. I have what I term as the creepy crawlies. And so, just been coughing a lot. So, so one of the biggest things that I've been working on and I'm concerned about and been pushing up in the state legislation that's going to affect this community is the Fair Park. I've been getting a lot of emails and feedback. People are concerned about what's going to happen with that property. About maybe a month ago, we went up to the state legislation and talked to the Speaker of the House. And it was myself, it was Senator Escamilla, it was Representative Rebecca Hawk, and it was also Angela Romero was there, and all of the representatives from the West Side. They sent somebody and we were all represented there. And so we were all able to express to the Speaker of the House our concerns about the Fair Park, what's going on and what's going to happen in its future. One of the things that we did get the Speaker of the House to agree on was that the fair needs to stay on the West Side, which was good. We were able to get that confirmation. One of the things we do not agree on is the lease. We are pushing for at least a 50-year lease. He is saying that he feels that we can do this with at least a 25-year lease. But it's not making sense to me because when you do business, who's going to want to do business with someone with a 25-year lease if we're looking at something long-term over on that fairgrounds? There's going to be 2 bills that's going to be introduced this upcoming session. Well, there's 2 people working on the bill this upcoming session. There is Senator Van Tassel, who's working on the bill. I haven't seen that bill yet. He keeps saying that we're going to like what's in the bill, but I need to see it before I say we're going to know whether I'm going to like it or not. And also, Representative Schultz is working on the bill. Senator Escamilla also has opened a bill file. She's working on the bill for the Fair Park. I've had a chance to have a discussion with Representative Schultz, and one of the things that I have been pushing for is to make sure that the West Side has a representation on the new board that they're looking at. They're looking at changing the governance of the board. Another thing we agreed on is that the governance needs to change on the board, and so the structure they're looking at now is that they're going to have a board, and then that's going to be over the Fair Park, and then there's going to be a Fair Park, a board to govern the actual fair. I have been pushing to make sure that there is West Side representation on that board. Schultz assured me that in this upcoming bill that he's going to have in there that the mayor will be able to appoint a resident from the West Side to be on that board. And so I'm happy about that. The next thing I'm pushing for is for an elected official to be on that board, an elected official from the West Side, who lives on the West Side, to be a part of that board. So that's what I've been doing because I want to make sure that the people on the West Side that our interest is protected in all of this, and what we want to see done in our vision for the fairground is taken seriously. The Speaker of the House said he did not have an idea in mind for economic development on that land. But we all in agreement that there needs to be some type of economic development that's going to be able to sustain the fairground throughout the year when the fair is not there. They are looking at Days of 47 and coming to the fairground, so they are looking at building an arena over there. And so he was happy about that because he said he'd never seen a community that actually wants a fair in their community. But understood that we do have pride in the fair because of historical value, and it's a gateway that we open up our community to say, this is our community, this is our red carpet. And so he was happy to hear about that. But they are looking at doing a deal with the Days of 47, and they're also looking at possibility of Salt Lake County moving their fair over to the fairground. So those are 2 of the things they're working on, and they're also working on looking at other vineyards that may be able to come into the area and have their and have different conventions over there. We are emphasizing that those buildings need to be updated, that there needs to be money placed in those buildings. You know, one of the things I did say was that you cannot run in a car without putting oil in it, and then be surprised if you got to put all of this money in your car now. And that's the way I've been looking at the fairgrounds. It's been neglected financially over the years, and now it's time to put money into it. So that's one of the biggest things that I've been working on that's going to affect this community. And one of the biggest things that I've been pushing for. I think I took up my 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Todd Weiler, and got a number of issues I'm pursuing. I'm just going to tell you about one of them. Under the 6th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, you have the right to counsel. And in 1963, the U.S. Supreme Court, in a decision called Gideon, basically said it was a state's obligation to make sure that poor people or indigent people had adequate right to counsel if they were facing potential jail time. Probably about 2 seconds after that decision came out, the state of Utah kicked that obligation to the counties, and we have 29 counties in Utah, and the state kind of washed its hands of that obligation. I've been serving for 4 years on a committee that's been looking at indigent defense services in Utah, and it's reprehensible what's going on in this state. The good news, the only good news, is that Salt Lake County has done a fairly decent job with their indigent defense services for the 6th Amendment. The further you get from Salt Lake, the worse it gets. I'm an attorney by profession, and I was actually assigned this topic by the state president 4 years ago when I was first elected. I've been serving on this committee. We've had prosecutors and judges and defense attorneys and all kinds of people on this committee. We had an out-of-state agency come in and kind of do a survey of what was going on in 9 of our 29 counties. So I'm basically running a bill that's going to get some skin back in the game for the state. We're going to create a defense services office that will oversee what's happening in the counties. And we're going to try to stave off a lawsuit from the ACLU. I'm not sure if that's going to be successful or not, but we need to put more money into it, and the quality of your defense services shouldn't depend on what zip code you're elected in, but right now that is definitely the status quo. Second of all, real quick, another issue I'm working on that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I'm working with the AARP on this one, and that is a lot of Utahns are not saving for their retirement, and the numbers are just staggering. Fortunately, I mean, we have Social Security right now. Hopefully, when all of you retire, you'll get your Social Security that you're paying into. I'm not crossing my fingers, but I hope that I'll get mine. But what we know is this: if you can have a payroll deduction at work, just where you can sign up and they'll take the money out of your paycheck before you ever get your hands on it, people are 7 times more likely to save for their retirement if they can just do it through a payroll deduction at work. And if you take out the public employees and just look at the private sector, about 52% of the workers in Utah do not have that option at work. So I'm running a bill that's going to try to change that and help people, encourage people to save for their own retirement, be a little bit more self-dependent, self-reliant. The reality is if you retire and you're broke, you're going to end up on a lot more government services, a lot more welfare services, and there is that safety net there, but I think people are a lot prouder if they're self-sufficient, and so we're going to try to make it easier for people to save for their own retirement if they so choose to. So nothing mandatory, nothing mandated there, but just some incentives to start saving. So with that, I think we'd be happy to answer any questions.
While we're on the subject, Todd, the indigent defense bill, I'm a prosecutor by trade. I worked at West Point City for a long time, and I think that at least the problems the ACLU is complaining about are probably a lot more common at the local level with city contracts, with private firms, that type of thing, and the county level where we have a pretty robust public defender system for county charges. Of course, the place most people will encounter justice is probably at that city level. For most non-serious crimes. So what oversight are you proposing that might help cure some of those issues and hopefully stave off the lawsuit?
Well, one of the things that we're doing with the justice courts at the city level is there's a bill that's going to be taking a lot of the Class C misdemeanors down to infractions, so that'll just take jail off the table for several, I think probably 200,000 cases a year. And again, we only have to offer a public defender if jail time is a possibility. So if it's just an infraction, so that's one of the things we're doing. I've been working with the courts. A lot of the reforms we need to come from the judicial branch, and I know the courts are stepping up to the plate. They're doing better training. A lot of people are surprised to find that a lot of our justice court judges are not legally trained. They're not lawyers. They didn't go to law school, and so in several instances when we had these people from out of state doing this survey, they would go up to a justice court judge after he had just sentenced someone to jail, maybe for a parole violation, probation violation or something, and say, do you think you should have offered that defendant the right to talk to an attorney before you sentenced him? And in a couple of instances, the judges would shrug their shoulders and say, well, that's a good question. I don't really know the answer. And so that's actually the status quo. We're not talking about 1940 Utah. We're talking about 2015, 2016. So I hope that answers your question. So those are some of the things we're looking at.
Okay, one of the things I will ask is that, if you've got a question directed to a specific individual, we'll direct that question. So anyway, so thanks for getting us started out. So going to open up for questions here. So if you've got a question to...
I always do.
Okay. So who'd you like to direct your question to?
It's so quiet if I don't.
I know.
Mr. Wheeler, I donated out of committee, and what is the amount of money that you're looking for the indigent?
Well, the bill's still being drafted, so it hasn't been to committee yet. I'm looking for about $6 million in state money. I'll probably get half of that if I'm lucky this year.
The money that they want to get off of the speeding tickets, the ones that are only $25.
Yes.
Can they not shift that money towards that?
Yeah, I'm sure they could. I'm sure they could. So right now that money goes in the general fund. But so what Margaret's referring to is there's a proposal from Senator Hilliard because of a certain speed trap in Manaway, which most people pronounce wrong, but it's on the way up to Logan where he lives. And he said he's never been caught there, but it's a very small town, beautiful lake. It's a very small town, but the police chief is the mayor, and he sits out on the I-15 and writes tickets. Or it's not I-15, but it's a state road, 89, and writes tickets all day. And so half of the revenue from those tickets go to the town, and basically Manaway is doing their whole budget off of the tickets that the mayor writes as the cop, which is kind of interesting. But so the concept is to take that down to 25% to give cities less incentive to do what Manaway is doing, and then the rest of the money would go to the state and the general fund. So.
I'm not sure which need to address. I'm Autumn, by the way. I've been in decent contact with you too, so thanks very much. I've only lived here for 2 years, and I don't know when the parking meters downtown were changed to what they are today, but I find them pretty unreasonable. Why is there not an option, or how can we do something about? If I park somewhere for 5 minutes, and I can go somewhere else in the city for 5 minutes, I'm paying $2 for an hour when, the old days of just putting in the...
You need coins. You can put in a nickel or a dime or a quarter.
Well, the app doesn't allow that.
No, but believe me, I carry a lot of coins because of those machines.
So you can do coins.
Yeah, you can. But on the parking issue, I'll tell you, it is a frustration. It has been. We finally have all the bugs worked out. There's new software in it. They've replaced all the guts. The other thing that really frustrates me is you pull up the app. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, and I pay for it, but it starts actually from when I open the app. So if it takes me 5 minutes to fill out all the information, I'm already down to 1 hour and 55 minutes. So there are a lot of issues with it, but believe you me, since you moved here, it is much better than it was before.
Well, it also just takes away the goodwill of giving a minute 30 to somebody else,
Yeah.
or to have it roll over for yourself.
There's also a trick, and I won't tell you who did it, but you could actually shave down a penny on one side, and then shave it on the other side, and give yourself 45 minutes. And with the old system, you can't do that anymore. I don't know who did that, but... it's in the cloud. It's
It's
gone.
kind of like my cell phone minutes. There's just no way to roll them over.
I wish you could, but believe me, it is so much better. And the great thing about parking is we have so much off-street parking. I mean, we have so many different open parking lots, parking structures that you can park in. So if you find one of those, it's you know, we actually have more off-street parking than we do on-street down in Salt Lake City. So. There was a parking study, and trust me, I read it.
But it may not be practical. I mean, my office used to be in downtown Salt Lake, and I told Jackie this, during the campaign. I moved my office
because of the parking. Yeah.
It was unfunctional to have my office in downtown Salt Lake because of the parking. This is by the Delta Center. It's much worse over there. But if you're a little bit further away, where there is some off-street parking, but all by the Delta Center, the gateway, it's either metered or it's private lots.
Right.
You couldn't fight that far, Jeff? What's that? You couldn't fight that far? It's my client. I have no parking for my clients. I have rented space for my office.
But now you bought. You're a proud owner.
What's that?
You're a proud owner now in your office building, right?
I'm proud owner of my office building. There we go. But, yeah, I needed parking.
Yeah.
Are there any, I mean...
Private parking lots. The Gateway, City Creek Center, they've got several hundred in there, so there really is a lot of parking if you pay. Either you pay with the ticket or you pay with the parking meter. So, Margaret, you raised your hand.
Yeah, the Congress, or for Sandra and for Todd, we all know how legislature works. They thump chest all the way to last week. Then they cram everything through the last week. Last year it was the Medicaid, right?
Yes.
Pretty much. This year it's the lands bills. Is it, or is it something else? Because we try and pay attention, but nothing really hits that I can keep track of unless it's in the news or in the paper, in the Tribune. So how else do we keep track of these things? Because a lot of times you'll see something, but it doesn't give you the information online what the bill is about or anything. But what is the thumb, other than the lands that everybody's doing about the $14 million, what else is being done this year that, instead of them cramming it all into omnibus bill like they did last year?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure exactly what the big issues will be the last week of the session, but let me just address this because the Tribune just kind of has a heyday, and I've had, this is my 5th session, so I'm starting to get it down. And what the process that any legislature goes through is always compared to making sausage. And if you want to enjoy sausage, you never want to watch it made at a slaughterhouse. And the same is true with what we do, trust me. But let me tell you, there is a little bit of a method to our madness. So right now, at the beginning of the session, because we started a week ago last Monday, we are, Sandra's on the House floor 1 hour a day, and we're on the Senate floor 1 hour a day. And the rest of the 7 or 8 or 9 hours a day, we're in committees. And so we're talking about budget, we're talking about bills. And then as the session progresses, we spend less time in committees and more time on the floor. But the reason we pass so many bills the last week, which the Tribune just loves about, is because the last week or so, we're on the floor 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, and we're not in committees anymore. And so it's not as if we're just twiddling our thumbs right now and waiting for the last week to do everything. We are, every bill has to be heard in a House committee and a Senate committee and passed out with a majority vote. So we're doing all those committee meetings now, and that's where we get the public input. And then a lot of those bills will stack up and they won't get debated on the floor because we're only on the floor an hour. And so when we start spending literally 14 hours on the floor some of the last days, of course we're going to pass more bills, but all of those bills are percolating up right now. And so I know the Tribune makes it sound like we're doing something nefarious. Yeah, oh, of course it is. Of course it is. So you are correct. Most of the most controversial issues will not get decided until the last night of the session. And I'll tell you why. We're a lot like your family, okay? If you have a hard decision to make, you're going to usually wait until your deadline, like if you're going to pay your rent or move out, or you're going to kind of wait till the last second to make that decision. That's what we do on the really tough ones, because we're human and we're just like you. And if we can wait, if we don't have to make that decision today, if we can make it tomorrow, a lot of times we make it tomorrow. And again, it's not nefarious, but sometimes we're twisting arms, and sometimes we're trying to build consensus, and sometimes we're waiting for final budget numbers. There's a lot that goes into it, but I will tell you, we're not perfect, and I'm not perfect, but a lot of what happens up there is not nearly as masterminded and as nefarious and evil plotting as the newspapers make it sound. Unfortunately, it'd be a lot more fun to be up there if we were really, wringing in our hands. A lot of it's just, we're humans, we're doing our best, and we have so much time. Our state constitution says we have to end at midnight on the 45th day, so that's March 10th. So we will be there until midnight on the 45th day, and a lot of the hard, tough decisions, we're going to make that last night.
And I agree, it's overwhelming. I believe the last time.
I don't know how you guys keep track of it.
That's what I was about to say. There is 1,100 bills up currently, they said, that they have open. And so it is very, very hard to keep count of what's going on. I work a lot with my colleagues, where we also, Democrats, we all sit together. We all work together, keeping watch over what's coming down the pike and what we should be concerned with. And I have this awesome intern, and he knows what I'm looking for, and I tell him, okay, these are the issues I'm looking for that may impact my community. If you see these coming down the line, then let me know what's going on. Another thing I would suggest is when you go online and look at the different committees, look at what you're interested in, and go through and look at what bills are being presented in those committees. So if you're interested in criminal justice reform, go to the Criminal Justice Committee and look at what's going on. If you're interested in education, and go through. That's kind of how I have to sort things out, because it's too much. It's too much to keep up with.
Yeah, because you ask for input and you want our opinions, but
Yes.
you don't know. I mean, it's like trying to help you guys out, to hear what we say, and the only ones. That's what I'm saying about the Tribune. That's the only time. Oh man, there's that one, but I'm trying to look for other ones online, and I don't know how to look it up. Maybe.
Let me just say one other thing. Sandra mentioned 1,100 bills. I think it's actually 1,200, so I'm not trying to correct her, but less than half of those will ever make it onto the floor of the House or the Senate. And here's the good news. 85% or more of all the bills we pass are technical in nature. They're like potholes. Potholes aren't Republican or Democrat. About 85% of the bills that we pass are unanimous or nearly unanimous, okay? So for you and the public, and nobody's going to tell you what those 85% are, but it's really the other 10 to 15% that we spend most of our time on, and that's where the debates are, and that's where the lines are drawn. And actually, I can tell you, as a senator, I've never been in the House, but we get pretty well educated. We get a lot of feedback on that other 10 to 15%, because those are the ones you're reading about in the Tribune. I mean, so many bills we're just extending a sunset date, or we're just updating a statute for some technical changes, and it's just, I mean, you could fall asleep every night reading those bills, and you'll never get your heart pumping. So I think there's a question here and then back there.
Well, my phone's actually to Margaret, since now I know your name. There's an app called Bill Tracker. I don't know if you know about that, but you can, once you find the bill.
I don't have a smartphone.
Oh, okay.
You
might
can
be
do
able
it
to
on your computer.
On your computer.
I know you have email, because you email me every day. Except today.
You want Republican continue.
No, I love it.
Margaret, where's the love? I haven't had an email from you in a while.
Session's in. Okay. Hey, we have our first question from YouTube. All right, here it is. To Senator Weiler.
Oh, good.
This is good. This is good. Instead of spending time on the anti-porn bill, do you ever plan to propose legislation supporting better sex education in Utah? This would have multiple positive effects by letting teens get real sex education from trained people rather than porn. This would also make them more empowered about what sex is and that they have the power to make decisions for their bodies, which would help prevent sex abuse and teen pregnancies from consensual sex.
Okay, fair question. I've been asked that question about 52 times this week. So first of all, let me say I'm not running a porn bill, but I have some constituents in Bountiful that brought me a porn resolution, which is not passing a law, it's not funding anything, it's not banning, we're not going to take away your porn, we're not going to make it illegal to masturbate or anything like that, I promise. But it does, I'm working with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation in Washington, D.C. There was a conference in D.C. last year about pornography as a health crisis. And let's be honest, when I was a kid, occasionally someone would sneak a Playboy into school or maybe to a summer camp or something, and I'm not defending that, but that's what happened. Now, within 2 or 3 clicks, you can see the most degrading, violent sexual content, whether you're 11 years old in a library, here or at home, and let's not pretend like this horrible, evil, degrading content isn't having any effect. It's undermining marital relationships. It's undermining a lot of the things that make our society great, and it's staining a lot of our children's innocence. And so this is a resolution. By the way, I'm running a lot of substantive bills this session, like the 2 I mentioned, but I was approached by a group of my constituents who care very deeply about this, and I think it's worth discussion. And this resolution, it's SCR 9, it was discussed on The View yesterday, and the best part of that was Whoopi Goldberg actually pronounced my name correctly, which was kind of cool for me. It was been on CNN, Fox News, Time Magazine, all this week, Maxim Magazine, they don't like it at all. But I think it's important to have a discussion, and I think that like tobacco 70 years ago when people said it's not addictive and it's not harmful, and now we know tobacco is addictive and it is harmful, I believe in a lot of science and research. This is not a Mormon thing, it's not a moral thing. A lot of science and research says that pornography is very addictive and that it's also harmful. And so we're just having that debate. Now, on the sex ed question, I believe they're separate questions. You can look at all 50 states, there's 3 different kinds of sex ed. There's abstinence only, which every day someone tells me Utah is abstinence only. It's not true. There's abstinence only sex ed, there's abstinence-based sex ed, and there's comprehensive sex ed. So all 50 states, they have one of those 3. Utah's right in the middle. We're abstinence-based. So we actually do talk about sex in high school. We're not comprehensive. Representative Brian King has a bill this session that will get debated to upgrade us, if you will, from abstinence-based, not abstinence only, up to comprehensive sex ed. I'm not sure if that bill will pass or fail, but we are having that discussion. Now, I can tell you with a surety, even if we pass comprehensive sexual education, if we go up to the top tier of that, it's not going to end pornography. People aren't going to say, oh, well, I learned about that in school, so I'm not going to click on that. I believe they're separate issues, and I'm not going to say they go hand in hand because that's just gross.
Can I just add on to that? Yeah, it's not going to end pornography, but what it will do is address the rise in gonorrhea in our state that is currently going on. I was surprised to learn that, I believe it was by 43%, we have increased in this state. And so I have a concern about that. You're talking about the abstinence education, but it just seems to me that abstinence is not working. That we need to, I believe that the more we empower our youth to know what their options are, the better decisions that they can make.
All right, here, then we'll get another question.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that in the state of Utah, children in the state, students in the state have questions. They want to understand what's going on, what they're feeling, everything. And it is illegal for teachers to answer those children's questions, and to me that's just wrong. So, is it Senator King? Representative King in this bill, I believe that he's trying to address that as well. So, have you seen any of the bill just yet? Do you know how you're going to vote?
I'm in the Senate, so it hasn't made it over to us yet. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I haven't had a chance to read it.
So we got another question back here.
It's not YouTube.
Okay.
Representative Hollins, can you explain the school to prison pipeline that was up in the news recently? I'd love to hear from you what you've got planned and how you're going to address it.
Sure. One of the things that I am concerned about is the school to prison pipeline, and that it disproportionately affects children with disabilities. I'm concerned about the rate of graduation in this state. when you sit and you look at the statistics of the number of kids who are not graduating and the number of kids that are going into the criminal justice system, it concerns me. So what I'm doing is I'm running a bill that's going to help address that. What it is it's a student resource officer bill, and it's going to clarify the student resource officer role in the public school. Some of the concerns I've been hearing from our student resource officers is that in the school system, there's a gray area, and sometimes they're called to the classroom to deal with a student who may be disrupting the classroom, and the teacher wants them to deal with it as a criminal offense, when really it's a discipline offense. What this bill is pretty much saying is that there's going to be a memorandum of understanding between the school boards and the SRO officers with a minimum level of understanding of what the level of expectation is in the school, and that with the hopes that we're not sending our kids into the criminal justice system. And so I'm still working on the bill. It's not anything that's completed. I've been working with with Sergeant Ross of Salt Lake City Police Department, the Bountiful Police Department. Been bringing them to the table because I want to address any concerns they have. And I've been working with school administrators, and I've been working with CCJJ, trying to bring everybody to the table to come up with something that we can all agree on and that we all feel comfortable with. One of the things that we all do agree on is that we do have a school to prison pipeline here in Utah, and that it needs to be addressed, and everybody is concerned about it, and that we need to have some training, look at training and support training that is already out there for our SRO officers.
And this is the first I've heard of Representative Hawkins' bill, but I support it. I was contacted. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Hollins. I don't know why I'm calling you Hawkins. Stephen Hawkins, because you're smart like Stephen Hawkins. Representative Hollins. I was telling you. Okay. I still support it. Collins with an H. I'm going to work on that tonight. It was brought to my attention of a situation that happened at school where a kid pushed another kid, so he pushed him back, and right as the teacher was coming around, so right as he pushed the second kid back, that kid then ended up falling into a teacher who was coming around the corner that they didn't know was there, and so then the second kid got charged with assaulting the teacher and is facing potential juvie time. When it was just an incident that happened at school. So I completely support your bill on that. I also was talking to some officials. Part of my district takes in North Salt Lake, and in North Salt Lake we have the Spectrum Academy, which is a charter school for children with autism, and it includes high school. So they'll get some big kids with autism who have some problems, and one of their disciplinary methods with autistic children is a timeout. Well, according to current school board guidelines, if you have a child in timeout for more than 30 minutes, you have to call the police. And so now they're getting these autistic kids who just are being disciplined at school, and sometimes they weigh 100 pounds more than the teacher, and you're getting the police involved, which is kind of silly because they're disabled kids and they're trying to teach them that what they did was inappropriate, there's consequences for their behavior. So I think there is some room for reform here.
And also I want to add, I realize that with this, there's going to be a gap. I want to be able to support our teachers because I realize that our teachers are at their wits' end, in the classroom, because we're asking them to do a whole lot more in the classroom and keep passing all these mandates of what they have to do. And so as a part of this, also what I want to look at in the future also is how do we get our teachers more support in the classrooms. So if they do have a kid that's in the classroom that's misbehaving, that we can bring someone in to help out and figure out what's going on with this child and why this child is misbehaving, and bringing their parents into the classroom.
I've got a question.
I just have a follow-up on that, Representative Hollins. Is your proposed legislation going to be addressing zero tolerance policies at all? Because it seems like that's a lot of times what creates situations like what Senator Weiler was saying. It's just that there's zero tolerance policies, and so law enforcement has to get involved.
Yes, it's a part of the memorandum of understanding that we're looking at is also looking at when is it appropriate to bring law enforcement into the classroom, and when is it appropriate for school administrators to be able to handle that child or work with that child. Yes.
It seems like every year, it's for the legislators, we hear more and more, at least in the media, and I think also just from people on the Hill, about this quest to reclaim our public lands for Utah. Obviously, I don't think to be a rancher, I don't know, it's obviously important to a lot of people, but at least for you guys who represent us in Salt Lake County, this doesn't seem to be an issue that I think most people here want to devote a lot of time and resources to. How involved are you in fighting for or against that, and what's your position on that?
I'll start off, and I'm glad you didn't direct this one to James. He's busy filing down the sides of his pennies right now.
It doesn't work anymore.
So the original Sagebrush Rebellion started back in the early 1980s under Democratic Governor Scott Matheson, and the state started pushing back then. Let me just frame the issue real quickly, and I'll kick it over to Sandra. But when Utah was created as a state, we had certain language in our Enabling Act, and almost all the western states had word for word the same language. The only difference was ours says Utah, whereas North Dakota says North Dakota. And so when I picked them because they're 100% the same language. And so when North Dakota became a state, a couple decades before Utah did, they basically, the federal government had all this land, and then over time, the federal government released that land back to North Dakota. And so today, North Dakota controls about 98% of its land within its boundaries. In Utah, the federal government still controls about 67% of the land within our boundaries, even though we basically started with the same deal. And what happened was there was a change of philosophy in Washington, D.C., and they said, well, no, we're not going to give that land back anymore. We're going to keep it. So most of the state of Utah is controlled by the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, which means as a state, we can't tax it, and we don't have really any decision making over it. So in North Dakota, now they are, in fairness, they're going through an energy boom. At least they were until OPEC dropped the oil prices below $30 a barrel. But North Dakota spends about $17,000 per pupil on their education system. Utah spends about $6,000. Do you notice a difference there? No. So a lot of us believe if we could get control of our lands like we believe we're entitled to, that we would be able to spend more on education and other things. And it's not completely insane. Now, the problem with that is, and I wasn't on the interim committee, and I don't believe you were either, but there was an interim committee that looked at this, last year during the summer and fall, and they proposed to spend $14 million for this law firm in the South that says that they can win this lawsuit for us. I don't know if we can win the lawsuit. I think it's probably worth spending a little bit of money. We've got our own Attorney General's office with over almost 200 attorneys in it. So I support, we've been talking about this for over 30 years since Scott Matheson was governor. So I support in concept the idea of trying to see if we can get those lands back because I think it's kind of a fairness issue and an education issue. But I don't support spending $14 million on it. I think that's ridiculous. So.
My position is I don't support spending $14 million to try to take back those federal lands. I have a concern that if the state of Utah take control of those lands, whether they're going to still be open and available to family. What are they going to do with those lands, with that land once they get a hold of it? Is it still going to be a part of our scene, or are we going to sell it off for a profit? And I think that's a legitimate concern. I'm also concerned about wildland fires and who's going to pay for that. If there's a fire, we know fires can get up to billions of dollars. My husband is a wildland firefighter. So I know the reality that those fires can sometimes get up to billions and billions of dollars, and who's going to pick up the tab for that? And so no, I'm not in support of it. I can think of a whole lot of other ways I could be spending this state could be spending $14 million.
Okay, you got a question?
Yeah, so, 14 million seems to be quite a concrete number that's being thrown around, and I appreciate you starting off your opinion about that. So is this still being worked on, or is what is being proposed $14 million? And perhaps, Senator, if you could clarify your view on that. I know you said that you don't agree with spending $14 million, but if that is what is being proposed, then what is your stance? Is it?
Well, I don't agree with that price tag. I think if we're going to pursue it, we should try to do it through our own Attorney General's office. We're paying all of those attorneys. If we need some outside consultants, then I think I'm open to that. But the $14 million is a price tag to me is offensive. It just seems excessive. And quite frankly, honestly, I'm a lawyer. I mean, I haven't spent hundreds of hours researching this, but I doubt we'll win the lawsuit. I think it's probably worth trying and just putting the issue to rest, and maybe we do win it. But I do have, I think, more confidence than my colleague here that I don't think we're going to put a McDonald's in Bryce Canyon or anything like that. We actually have some beautiful state lands. I don't know how many of you have been to like Dead Horse Point, that the state is managing, and it's almost as beautiful and pristine as the Grand Canyon. So I think we've proven that we can do a good job with state parks, and I'd even be in favor of, even if we can win the lawsuit, that we'd let the federal government continue to control some of those, national parks. And I don't think anybody's even talking about taking those back. But it does seem a little bit paternalistic for us to only be able to control about 33% of the land in our state when all of our neighbors, except for Nevada and a few others, most of our neighbors got their land back. So,
I think we have time for one more question.
First up, I just want to thank you all for being here and taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And I guess this really isn't a question, but I hope that as my representative and senator, you guys will fight for transparency in government. I'm a little nervous about things that are trying to be swept under the rug, particularly with spending the federal land fight. So I hope that you'll fight for transparency. And what else I was going to say, so I'm going to that.
let me just say, I believe, I agree with you, and I believe in openness and transparency and accountability. I will tell you, and I said this once, so I won't repeat that, we're not perfect, and not everything we do is perfect, but we have the most transparent state government right now in Utah in 2016 in the history of the state, going back to the days of Brigham Young. And a lot of that's just because of technology. We have a website, le.utah.gov, that wins an award almost every year as the most. You can click on there and listen to our committee meetings as they're happening. You can click on there and watch floor debates from 5 years ago or 5 minutes ago. It does take some time, Margaret, and you kind of have to navigate it through the system. But with social media, I mean, there used to be a lot more shenanigans that would happen back in the. I hear about the so-called glory days of non-transparency, but I can tell you, even though the Tribune has 1/8 of the reporters they did 10 years ago, the transparency has improved. I think it'll continue to improve. And a lot of the fact that we're having this discussion, and a lot of you know a lot of the issues this session, I think is a very good sign.
Okay, so anyway, if you've got any more questions.
Can I say one last thing? Sure. This is really great. For everybody that has a dog, it used to be, well, it still is currently, a misdemeanor if you have a dog off leash. People were being cited for that, and as chair this year, I have scheduled it to get rid of that fine for having a dog off leash. There will still be a fine penalty if the dog bites or attacks, or for that type of, I guess you call them mad dogs. But it's important for all the people in our community. We have a lot of dog lovers. We have Cottonwood Dog Park. We have a future dog park going in at Rosewood Park, but I wanted to let everyone know that that is on the agenda and will be taken off. So,
thank you.
Yes.
So I would like to give our representatives a round of applause. If you have more questions for them, there is information up here. They'll be happy to answer those, and they will get back to you. Also, kind of one last thing we've got is our neighbor to neighbor. There's a couple of things coming up, wanted to mark your calendars on. April 23rd will be our community cleanup that we'll be doing with the, I believe we're going to target 10th North as well as 6th North, if I understand correctly, or whatever we're going to do anyway. April 23rd, so mark that down. And believe it or not, it's going to be here before we know it, but May 21st is our community festival. We'd like to get some, some good involvement in that. If you'd like to participate with that, please get a hold of one of the council members. Last year, as you remember, with the rain and everything we had, I'm happy to announce that it's the first year since I've been running the entertainment section, we've had no cancellations with the rain. So I don't get it, but it works. So hopefully this year we won't have the rain and we'll have no cancellations. So mark your calendars for May 21st. We do want to keep people involved in that. There are opportunities for involvement, so please contact us. Blake, do you have anything else from neighbor to neighbor?
Well, we had maybe one or two people last time at a January meeting. So the community council, Dan up there, submitted it. We put in a a capital improvement program grant for some safety improvements on 6th North and 8th West. So we haven't heard back yet from the city, but we proposed 2 bulb outs and 2 RRFPs, rectangular flashing beacons on 6th North on the west side. So it'll actually, if you're not aware what bulb outs are, they'll actually bring the curve out a little bit, so it's a shorter distance for people to walk across, and it actually should hopefully slow down people going down the hill on 6th North. And then the rapid rectangular flashing beacons are for pedestrians, so when they cross, they can hit it, and then the lights will rapidly flash. So the driver should see that. Hopefully we'll hear from them soon. We submitted that at the end of December. That is a long process. That's for next year. That's going to be for 16, 17.
Yeah, this year, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
But I know a few guys too, so.
Yeah. Councilmember Rogers on it. All 3 council members. It's an interesting area because it's actually not District 1.
It's not District 1.
But it is Rose Park.
Yeah.
So Councilmember Penfold is aware. Councilmember Johnson is aware. So we have a lot of support, and hopefully it gets through.
One more thing, just like to bring up. March 22nd is the caucuses, and that we'll have some more information out on those. The Democrats, they're meeting at Rose Park Elementary. I'm not quite sure where Ledge 23 for the...
I'm not sure either, but if I could just footnote one thing. Under the new election law, I think both parties are doing a presidential primary as part of the caucus. You can log on online, I think the night before, and vote if you can't go. You can also collect some absentee votes if you follow the rules, and they're pretty onerous. And you could bring, if you want to run for delegate, you can bring some absentee votes with you. So those are new concepts this year. So you might want to check with your county party and get those rules.
We'll have the exact locations on those as well when we get a little bit closer, just to remind people.
I think most people don't know this, but because we did away with the primary for Utah, as Senator Wiley was suggesting, this is really the only way you can tell the state party or the national party which presidential candidate you prefer in the primary. So if you want to be, if you want your vote counted for any of the people running for the nomination, either go to the caucus or submit a vote the way Senator Wiley described. We're not going to have a primary. This is it. So.
Okay, Brad, you have one thing.
I've got something real quick. There's a new store just behind the old Blue Boutique off of North Temple. It's called Our Store. It's a thrift store. All the proceeds go to people with AIDS. It goes to a nonprofit to help people with AIDS. People volunteer their time to work there. All the stuff's donated there. All the money goes to people with AIDS.
Can you drop off stuff there too?
I'm not sure, but there's a bunch of these on the table outside. You can grab one and give them a call.
So anyway, we appreciate your coming and that. These guys are working hard for you. So I want to thank them. So anyway, and hopefully we have people coming in on
I think we had 23 people come in throughout the evening. So.
Thank you all. See you next month.
Will there be a third day?